Welcome, everybody, once again to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama, who is ready for some college football. I know this guy is ready. I cannot wait. It was awesome to be able to watch some games this weekend. I thought the Iowa State Kansas State game was pretty good. Maybe not as good as maybe not as good as the fireworks after the game, but I mean, what the heck are you doing? Oh, that was crazy. But anyway, I just can't wait, Jamie. This is the most fun time of the year. I get really excited about it. There's obviously a huge game for Notre Dame this weekend as they play on Sunday night down in Miami, and we're going to talk all about the Miami Hurricanes and how Notre Dame can best handle that group. And of course, we'll talk Irish football. We're also going to answer some of your questions in the chat. If you're in the chat today, we'll hopefully get to a few of them for sure. So make sure you're around and ready to ask some questions at the end here, because I think we'll have a little bit of time. We'll see how it goes. Before we get going, we want to mention our first sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang and Chicago's go-to for best custom suits, sports coats, and shirts. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now is the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ Master Tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now, with showrooms both in downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment and receive 10% off your entire purchase. Also, wanted to mention, great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up today. If you're watching the YouTube channel, first of all, greatly appreciate you watching the channel. If you don't know about the YouTube channel, search on YouTube for Irish Sports Daily. You can subscribe. We greatly appreciate it if you subscribe and like our videos. That will then put all future videos into your feed there on YouTube. We'll have lots of hit and hustle and all that type of stuff coming this week. Greg, I know, has got a full week planned, as well as Jamie, joining it. Also, I wanted to mention, we probably won't do, I need to talk to Greg about this, but we probably won't do Power Hour until Tuesday because it's a late game and Jamie and I won't have time to really kind of go over the game and rewatch it and formulate some opinions and that type of thing. So we may be doing it Tuesday morning. I need to talk to Greg about that and make sure that's okay with him.
We can do that. We can push Hit and Hustle to Wednesday, Thursday too.
Yeah, I just know your Sunday thing. You usually do your kind of thing on Sunday, and so I didn't want to step on that as well, because I know a lot of people like to, listen to your Hit and Hustle on the next day as well.
I mean, so Power Hour can serve as the morning after, right? I think that's good for everybody. So we're good.
Sure. All right,
we're good to go.
Good. All right. Let's get into it. The Miami Hurricanes. I tell you, I wanted to have a guy on to kind of preview this, but he was kind of flaky. Couldn't seem to nail down a time or anything. So I just said the heck with it. And I'm telling you, I don't care who I offend with this. Their fans are, they're crazy right now. They think Notre Dame is going to get crushed in this game. And I understand why. Last time Notre Dame went and played down there, it was not a good experience for Notre Dame, that's for sure. And Miami played extremely well. I expect Miami to come out fired up and ready to play in this game. But if they think that this is a Brian Kelly team, they got another thing coming. There's no way Notre Dame's going to go in there and lay an egg like they did against them in 2017. That's just not going to happen. I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to win. Miami has a lot of opportunities to win. They've got some good players. They've got a lot of good things going in their favor, which we're going to talk about. So I do expect a tough game and a tough atmosphere for sure. Absolutely do. But Notre Dame's not going to go down there and just fold their tent at the sight of Miami. I can assure you that. Now, will they play well? I don't know. We'll have to see. But this is a different defense. This is certainly a much different culture than the Brian Kelly teams. I think we can all agree with that. And then we'll see what happens. This is a team that, if you come and you want to punch them in the face, they're going to punch you back. That's the way it's been under Marcus Freeman. No team. I mean, I think what was the? I did a story I think earlier this year. I think the most they've ever lost by was like 10 points, something like that, or maybe it was 13. That was the most they've ever lost to by under Marcus Freeman. So this is not a situation where Notre Dame gets blown out very often. And but their fans, man, they swear up and down that Notre Dame's going to get crushed in this game, and I think that they'll be surprised. We'll see what happens in the end. And I'm not saying Notre Dame will win. I do think that they will. But it's going to be a very, very close game, and this is going to be one, I think, just like Texas A&M. It's going to be a battle. So, Yama, let's get started with Miami. Of course, we know Carson Beck is their quarterback. Let's talk offensive first. What can you tell us about this offense and where they're at heading into this game?
Well, I mean, obviously they spent a ton of money, reported like $4 million to bring in Carson Beck to replace Cam Ward. Everybody knows Cam Ward was the number one pick in the draft. He was, about as good as, he was the best quarterback in college football last year. And frankly, he was one of the better ones in a while. I would say he was great. Obviously, you go from a guy who was at Washington State the year before to you transfer in for 1 year and then become the number one pick. You had a great year. They were, first in OF plus, combined FEI and SP plus, top 5 in basically every metric you can think of. And that's why they're, projected so high this year, because they were just so lights out last year. But I think it's a really different situation this year. It's not just like plugging in Carson Beck and expecting it to be the same thing. I think there's a little bit, one of the big differences is, Shannon Dawson's the offensive coordinator. He's still the offensive coordinator. Obviously did a fantastic job last year, has done a really good job there and at other spots too. But, Cam Ward came in. He was an air raid quarterback. This is, Shannon Dawson's an air raid guy. He's a Hal Mummy disciple, guy who worked with Dana Holgerson for years. And the big thing is, Beck isn't coming in where he has 4 years of the air raid. He's coming in basically, he has one fall camp. He missed the entire spring, much like Riley Leonard did last year because of his injury. Reports are that he's like completely healthy and he looks good. After his elbow surgery, he had Tommy John at the end of the season. But he doesn't have the same receivers. They lost their top, 6 pass catchers from last year. They don't have a ton coming back. They didn't go out and get really like a bunch of high profile guys in the portal. Just not the same level of guys that you would have kind of expect, because they probably spent more money on trying to get guys in the secondary for them, because that was such a huge problem for them. So they got a lot of young guys in at receiver, talented, definitely talented, but how good are those guys going to be right away? Everybody kind of knows, like, when you put in a receiver, it's rare that someone is ready as a freshman or a sophomore to be like a star. Maybe they'll be good. You'll see the flashes, but to have that level of consistency, to have the level of like an Xavier Restrepo, who last year, he's back-to-back 1,000-yard season guy for them. That's a big loss, right? And they have to kind of replace that. Now they got a ton of talent. Beck, when his clean pocket, he's awesome. One of the best guys. Top 10 quarterback in college football when he's got a clean pocket. When he's pressured, he's trash. He was, one of the worst guys in, second worst PFF grade for Power 4 quarterbacks when pressured. 9.4% turnover worthy plays, tied for the worst out of Power 4 quarterbacks when pressured. He went from 70th to 50th in EPA per drop back last year. He had a huge drop off in his play, and it wasn't just because of the drops at receiver. It was more than that. And frankly, he hasn't been pressured very often at all at Georgia. He's protected very well. Some of it is decision making. That's definitely a thing where he gets the ball out quickly. But a lot of it is, he played behind pretty good lines at Georgia. He played against good lines at, he'll play behind a good line at Miami this year. But with their offense, they run a lot more vertical routes. They have to protect a little bit longer. That's a thing. They gave up a lot more pressure last year. So I think they got a good running game. They got three good backs, not the level of Notre Dame's backs, but they got three very solid backs. One guy I think has a chance to be a star. Jordan Lyle's got a chance to be a star. But in the games where Beck has been pressured over 30% of the times, which is only 4 games last year, against Kentucky, only 13 points. They won a nail biter, 13-12, 33% pressure, yards per attempt, 6.7 in that game. They lost to Ole Miss, 35.9% pressured. YPA was 6.0, threw a pick, was bad in that game. Both times against Texas. Yes, they beat Texas, not because of Beck. He was bad in both games. 4.3 YPA in both games. Obviously he missed the second half of the SEC championship game, but 30.2% pressure in the first game, 42.9% pressure in the next game. And only 4.3 YPA, like I said, 3 picks in that first game. Like, the defense won the game for them. They did not, the offense did not deserve to win the game. And, Cam Ward last year pressured on over 30% of his dropbacks in 6 of 9 games. So getting pressure on Beck, huge in this game. Stopping the run, obviously huge. Getting into those situations where it's obvious passing situations, that's going to be big as well.
You hit the nail on the head for Notre Dame. They're going to have to stop the run game. If Notre Dame can stop their run game and just pin their ears back and come after Miami, I think they have a really good chance to win this game. I think Miami, as you mentioned, Miami's a pretty good running team. Now, did they play the best teams in the country to get those running yards? No, they did not. But, you could say the same thing about Notre Dame and some of their running stats as well. They didn't play the best teams in the country, but could they run on teams that were good? And that's the real question here. And then the other thing is, because they had Cam Ward and the ability to stretch the field, Jamie, and make those plays. And Cam Ward was one of the best deep ball throwers I've seen in a long time. And he had the ability to stretch the field. Because they were able to do that, a lot of defenses had to back off, right? They could not just sit there and play straight up or even load up against the run, because they're concerned about getting the ball thrown over the top against that type of a quarterback with those types of receivers. And Jamie, we've seen the difference between having one good receiver and having 4 or 5. You forget the tight end too. I mean, they had a heck of a tight end too. They had some really big time weapons, and it's one thing to defend one guy. It's something completely different to defend 4 or 5 out in pass routes that can all hurt you. And I just don't think Miami's going to have that this year. I don't think that they're going to have the ability to really challenge Notre Dame in the pass at so many different options that they did under Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward was elusive enough to avoid plays. He was also one of the better, guys outside the pocket. When he was pressured, he could get outside the pocket and make things happen. If you watch a lot of their big plays that he made, a lot of it was him scrambling, getting outside the pocket, finding guys downfield. Only certain quarterbacks have that ability. Not everybody has that ability. And so that's why I think Miami is a different team this year. But make no mistake, Jamie, I am a little bit concerned about this offensive line. Mario Cristobal, that's his thing. He's an O-line guy. They got 4 big dudes. I mean, they got some guys that are big, huge guys that you're going to have to face. But let me also point out, hey, Notre Dame faced some pretty big offensive lines in Georgia. Oh, yeah. Georgia had some dudes. Texas A&M, they had some big, giant guys as well, and it just didn't work out for them either. Now, Notre Dame doesn't have the same players, but, it's not like they had Riley Mills the whole time against Georgia. It's not like they had Riley Mills the whole time against Penn State. And look, Howard Cross was not the same player that he was. So Notre Dame's interior defensive line, that's a concern, I think. But I'm writing a story, because I always kind of do a preseason Frank commentary. And, one of the concerns I have about Notre Dame this year is their offensive line, because we've heard, Jamie, multiple sources that they struggled a little bit against Notre Dame's defense. And we know right now Notre Dame has a pretty good defense, but they also have a pretty good offensive line. Guys who've been battle tested, guys who've gone into wars and won and won their share of plays against some of the very best players in the country. And if Notre Dame's offensive line is struggling against Notre Dame's defense, that should tell you that, maybe Notre Dame's defensive line's a little bit better than people anticipate. And so I don't know how this is all going to unfold, but just because there's new players coming in, that doesn't mean that Notre Dame's not going to be pretty good there. I think we've seen, Kurt Hinish has been effective when he's in there.
Donovan Hinish, yeah.
Or Donovan Hinish. I'm sorry, Donovan Hinish. We've seen Jason Anye be effective when he's in there. Gabe Rubio, when he has a healthy foot, very stout against the run. And they have other dudes, with Jared Dawson, who can play both, the run and pass pretty well. So and then you look at the edge and what Notre Dame should have on the edge. And this is going to be a different, I think, defensive line than they've faced. And I think you pointed out in your thing how Miami struggled against Georgia Tech. They just could not run the football and do a lot of things. And then they also got pressured in the Georgia Tech game. Well, let me tell you, Notre Dame's defensive line and pass rushers, they ain't Georgia Tech. They're a whole lot better than that. And so I'm not getting cocky here because I think this is going to be a tough game, but it seems kind of comical to see all the Miami comments saying how they're just going to roll Notre Dame. I just don't see that happening. And we haven't even got to the back end of Notre Dame at this point, which is something that they have not faced at all. I mean, even under Cam Ward, they've never faced anything like that. So, and they'll find that out once the game goes along. But I am concerned about Notre Dame's about the Miami offensive line because it is pretty good. But again, can they dominate against a great defense? And every time they tried to face one, they had some problems. That's with Cam Ward. That's with these same offensive linemen. That's with 6 receivers who are pretty darn good that are no longer there. And they don't have that heading into this game. So that's why I feel it's a little blown out of proportion to think that Notre Dame's going to get rolled in this game. And maybe I come out on next week and I look like an idiot, but I'll just be surprised if that's the case. Your thoughts here?
It's not going to happen. I mean, the thing, they're not going to get rolled. Like Miami can win a close game. Yes. Sure. It's capable. They're capable of doing that. But I think one of these things is for people that follow, us who watch or listen to Power Hour, or watch or listen to Hidden Hustle, who, listen to just frankly, most of the people on the Notre Dame beat, not some of the random, whatever, YouTube videos. Talk about most people on the Notre Dame beat. People pretty cover the team very fairly, and even though, it's Notre Dame centric, they cover the team very fairly. That representation is not the same across college football. And I mean, trust me, when I look at Miami beat reporters and their team sites and stuff, it's sunshine and lollipops the whole time. Like, which I don't know, maybe that's the way they get access. That's just, but that, I mean, I don't know how much access they get anyways, but like, it's just, that's what it's like at a lot of programs. And I mean, I see it because I have to do a lot of previews for these teams too. And you see a lot of the coverage and know when there are like really, really good people who cover the team and do it very fairly and break it down. And frankly, you don't see that. So of course, Miami fans are going to think that every podcast they listen to tell them Miami is the U is back, right? That's all they hear. Right. So when they hear that kind of stuff, they're going to have like a misconstrued view of how good they are. I'm not saying they're not a good team. They are a good team. They have a lot of talent. They have some top end talent.
Yes,
but, they'll never have anyone tell them that last year they had the number 1 offense, but they didn't face a single defense that finished in the top 30 in EPA per drop back. Like they didn't face any kind of elite pass defense the whole year. Not even a good, technically like an above average one. They didn't face the whole year. And I mean, frankly, too, the ACC's was bad last year. It wasn't good. So that's the kind of thing that's different, which and I was actually just messaging with John Bryce, our friend from Football Scoop, and we were talking about how there's a difference between dominating the ACC in terms of the trenches you're going to really dominate, where then you got to go against Notre Dame, because Notre Dame is at a higher level in the trenches than just about every team outside of Clemson that Miami would play in the ACC. And that's just one of those, it's just a reality. So it's a different kind of thing where it's not to say that Miami isn't capable of winning the trenches or anything like that, but dominating, that's not going to happen. That hasn't happened to basically since 2022, the first year of Marcus Freeman. That Clemson game, point to a game where they were like, hey, the trenches, it's a problem. No, it's not. Like, Notre Dame they prepare physically to do that. And that's the strength of Miami's team, is the trenches. So if you say even that's just like a stalemate, well, then that means they have to win in other ways. And then that means, hey, their pass offense has to beat Notre Dame's pass defense, which we know is going to be very good. So it's the matchups are different than they would give then people are trying to say, or it's like they brag on this guy or that guy. It's not like those guys aren't good players. They are good players, but it's a different situation when you're going into a game where the competition's better. And even though it's a home game, it's still a higher level of competition.
I am encouraged that Notre Dame has the ability to fill some of these holes, and the other thing I think Notre Dame has going into this game is depth. I think they have good depth. They can run second string guys in there, and they're not far off the first string guys. I don't think a lot of teams can do that. I don't think Miami can do that over and over at position, where if you look at even wide receiver, right? And we've seen, Jamie, we know what it's like to have a poor wide receiver core. We know. Doesn't matter who your quarterback is if a guy can't get open. It just doesn't matter. So I just think when you look at the depth that Notre Dame has, and even at linebacker, we don't know that Drake Bowen's going to be as good as Jack Kaiser. I think he will be. I'll be very surprised if he isn't. But we've seen Drake Bowen, become a really good player, and especially towards the end of the year, I thought he played even better as time went on. Same thing with Jalen Sneed. And, Jalen Sneed, you're not going to find a linebacker that runs like that in a lot of places at college football. That guy can flat run. He's a great pass rusher. He can make things happen when he blitzes. And then you got a guy like Kingston Villa-Amu-Asa behind them. And of course, Jaden Osbury as well. Those are two guys who've played a tremendous amount of football already for Notre Dame. That's four guys they can run out there. That's not even talking about Kahanu Kia, who has started to surge. Madden Ferramo. There's a lot of linebackers they could run out there if they have to. And when you talk about secondary, there are not many teams in the country who have a tandem of Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. There just really aren't many. And then you throw in Devonta Smith, who was a very highly productive player at Alabama, as your nickel. And then, of course, Adon Schuler is your safety. It'll be interesting. I got to guess Stroman will start. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm going to guess he does. But again, here's a guy who's played a lot of football at Virginia Tech, and at this level. He knows what to expect because he's played at this level. You're not taking some guy from, Florida International and trying to plug him in and say, okay, now go run against these guys. These are guys that have played against this level, so they know what's out there. So, and then you have a lot of quality depth behind that. And so defensively, I think Notre Dame's going to be very good. And we talk about the temperatures, it looks like it's going to be about 80 degrees game start. Could be weather. Looks like a lot of rain now. That's projected, and that's a week out, so who knows? But if there is a lot of rain, how do you think that impacts this game, Jamie?
I mean, it could impact it in a ton of ways, but you would just think that there's going to be a lot less chucking the ball around, and I mean, then it becomes, a street fight. And that's just one of those things where if it really becomes a street fight in that way, and as long as like teams protect the ball like evenly, because there's bound to be like some turnovers and stuff when that happens. That's where I think depth comes into play too, because Notre Dame's just a little bit deeper than them in that way too, even the trenches. I just say roster overall. I think it says a lot about like, they brought in 19 transfers, from this year to last year. They are going to have 6 starters on defense who are transfers. Mario Cristobal has done a very good job of like building up the program from where it was in terms of talent wise, especially with the high end guys. But depth there is better than it was, but it's not quite where Notre Dame is at. Like, they're just in a different space because they have spent more to get guys in the portal, and they've spent more to get guys that are like high-end 5-star kids, but maybe they haven't done as good a job of identifying the other kids and developing some of the other kids. So you just haven't seen some of those guys like really like be there and step up and be good players and be developed yet, like you have at Notre Dame, right? Like they don't have guys like Josh Burnham, for example, right? Who's like, you've seen like this progression and now he's this, right? Like that's not a thing at Miami that you don't see that as much because it's been way more transactional, which is another thing that comes down to culture too, right? Like they're very much like a big, hey, you're going to spend big money. Obviously you can win games. Talent is going to win you a lot of games. But when it comes down to it, and it's like, hey, who's going to like lay it out on the line when it comes down to it? I mean, culture does matter in those situations. And I would say like, yeah, Notre Dame's got a probably pretty big edge there.
I would say culture for sure. And let's be honest, Texas A&M tried to fix their problems in the secondary and on their defense by bringing in a ton of guys last year. And that didn't work out so well for them either. They were solid, but they weren't great. When you got to plug in 6 players, it's because you got some problems, that's it. And it's not just the 6 players. If you got to plug in 6 players, that means not only did you not have 6 starters, but you don't have anybody for depth either at those 6 positions, because you wouldn't be bringing in 6 starters if you needed it. You know what I mean? So there's not a lot of depth there as well. Now, the offense, when we switch the ball here, Jamie, and we start talking about Notre Dame's offense, here's the thing that I don't think that a lot of people look at, and I'm writing a story about it for tomorrow. First-time starting quarterbacks, that's a thing. It just is. And if you go back and you look at the history of Notre Dame's first-time starting quarterbacks and how they've done, it hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been pretty. These guys have not necessarily played well. Now, that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen in this situation. Some of the guys like Brady Quinn started right away, first season. Some guys like Jimmy Clausen started right away, first season. Other guys like Ian Book had 3 years in the system before he really became the starter. And, so he played better because he had that many years in the system. Carr's going to be in his second year, really has no experience. And what I think it comes down in this quarterback play in this particular game, Jamie, is you just got to hope he's going to make a mistake. He's probably going to make multiple mistakes. You just have to hope that it doesn't happen at the worst time. And I think when you look at Tyler Buchner, a lot of the stuff that happened to him was truly at the worst time it could possibly happen. He just had bad luck where he'd throw a pick 6, things would get rolling, and then all of a sudden he would, throw a pick 6 and the momentum would change. And that's why Tyler Buchner just was not playing at Notre Dame and really didn't pan out at Alabama either. Certain guys can get away with an interception now and again because they come and then they make a bunch of big plays after that. So I think the key for Notre Dame is we have to hope that when Carr makes his mistakes, because he's going to, every first-year quarterback does, they're not critical pick 6, huge momentum-changing plays, and that, 2, when he does make those mistakes, he has the ability to then come and make some big plays to make up for those mistakes. And, a lot of first-time quarterbacks don't have that ability. Some do. We're not gonna know what we have in CJ Carr until we see it. But they're going to have to try and figure out a way to limit his mistakes. And if they do, we also got to try and figure out a way that he can hit some big plays. It doesn't always have to be him. Hopefully Jeremiah Love, JD Price can hit some big plays in the run game, that momentum changing plays. But he's going to have to make some in order to win this game. And that, to me, is, I think, the biggest concern heading into this game is, and I think the Miami fans have it right in saying, hey, you can't expect a first-time quarterback to come out and play well. It rarely happens. It just rarely happens. Your thoughts here?
I mean, if Notre Dame had Riley Leonard coming back for this game and he was the quarterback, I think they'd
win with 21 points.
Yeah, it would be a pretty big advantage. And I think that's the thing that really, it can swing the game, right? So it is going to be about limiting those mistakes and the timing of it and knowing when, hey, guess what? This is a time that you can take that chance. This is a time when you can't take that chance and all of that. And that's something that not all quarterbacks know in their first start, right? So that's going to be huge. That is going to be very important. But also, Mike Denbrock, you can be sure he's going to put Carr in situations where it's this is the situation to take the shot. And it'll be very much he's going to be on the headset, because you in the ear of the quarterback, and he's going to be if it's not there, throw it away, or what. It'll be very direct in some of these situations, but if it's there, that CJ Carr can make those kind of throws, right? And that's the thing, right? So, sorry, what were you going to say, Mike?
Well, no, I think that's a very good point, and I was going to point that out too. Is that in the past, you didn't have the offensive coordinator in the ear right before the play saying, "Okay, we're running this play. If that safety creeps over, do not throw that ball." Right? Go here with your check down. You have that. You didn't have that. Everett Golson didn't have that. Jimmy Clausen didn't have that. Ian Book didn't have that. Neither did Brady Quinn. So it is a big thing. But I also say, I almost guarantee you, as Mike Denbrock said to Riley Leonard in that NIU game, if it ain't there, don't throw that ball. And he did anyway. So, you know what I mean? Of course you're going to say
maybe
that.
He thought he did. Maybe he thought he didn't have to because he was, he's a vet. So
it was so obvious.
But then he probably was I should have said that to him, right?
Yeah, maybe, who knows? But yeah, it's one of those things that you would definitely say that. You would think you would, but who knows? Yeah. But it is a good point in that, hey, and so much of that, when you're in the pressure and you're in the moment, you need that one little thing that offensive coordinator comes in the headset and says, look, we're going to run this play. If you see this, do not do it. Do this. That's, if you hear that right before the play is called, that can minimize some of the things that you're doing. So I do think it's a good point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think, what's going to be super important is not putting him in a situation where it's the fourth quarter and you say, very similar to what it was in Texas A&M last year. If it gets to that point where it's hey, we need you to have a drive here to win the game. Well, Riley Leonard, he's been in those situations before and he's won those games. CJ Carr's been in those situations in high school. He hasn't been on the road at Miami, fans cursing at him and all that. He hasn't had that situation. So you don't want to put him in that situation. So hopefully what they do is they're able to kind of control the game. And then that's where it becomes a line of scrimmage game again, too, where you're able to run the ball. You are making throws, too, where you're you have these backs that can really make plays. They can make plays after the catch. Eli Raritan can make plays after the catch. You got a 220-pound, receiver in Malachi Fields. You have a 215-pound slot in Jaden Greathouse. Make these guys tackle. I mean, it's not that you don't want to take vertical shots. If you get them, yes, do it. But make these guys tackle. They were bad tackling last year. I know that's one of the reasons why they brought in so many guys. But they brought in a bunch of guys that were bad tacklers too. Good coverage guys, good athletes, But that was like a thing. And that definitely stood out when I was like, doing the scouting report on these guys. There's a lot of guys with like a high percentage of missed tackles in their careers. I would say so they're bringing Corey Heatherman from Minnesota. I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. Like he's going to make them better. They're projected to be 54th in DF plus. They're going to be better than that this year. Like I would be shocked because mainly last year, the reason why they were bad last year, they made a bunch of havoc. They got a bunch of pressure on quarterbacks. They gave up big plays like all the time. And Heatherman, one of these things is he simplified things, just going to let the athletes be athletes. They're obviously going to be very aggressive. They're going to attack and do all that. But it's like one of the reasons why they spent on all these corners, because it's like, well, now we can play a bit more man coverage and we can do this and we can say, hey, go out there and just match up. So it's going to be about Notre Dame winning some of those matchups in man coverage there, but it's also going to be about can you just run the ball, be consistent, and wear those guys down? Like I said, I don't think they're as deep up front, and that is one of those things where you have to be able to do that. I think Justin Scott is going to start for them at defensive tackle. He's got all the talent in the world. You see a bunch of flashes. He played about 100 snaps last year. Well, anyone who watches high school film know that he was the laziest dude out there. He'd disappear for large chunks of the game and then would make an incredible play. So you can't get away with that as a starter. You can get away with it as a backup. You can't get away with this as a starter. So if he's got it all figured out and the light's completely on for him, then he could be a dominant guy. If he's not, I mean, he could look bad, right? So that's one of those things where it's those kind of matchups are going to matter. How they tackle. If they still tackle, they might be better tackling, but not as good as they need to be tackling. And I mean, they're going to bring a ton of pressure. They're going to run blitz early. They're going to bring a ton of pressure on Carr. They're going to do that the whole game. The foot is going to be on the gas pedal the whole game until Notre Dame makes it oh, we can't do this anymore because, we're getting burned. That's the only way that happens. But it's going to be up to, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Notre Dame's backs, to do the exact same thing they did last year, which is also another reason why it's very hard for me not to imagine Notre Dame not having success, because one of the things that they're so good at is yards after contact, breaking tackles, and then creating explosive plays off of that. They just have those backs are two of the toughest backs to tackle in college football. And you can contain them for oh man, Love's only got 9 carries for 16 yards here. And then he breaks off 60. That can happen. That is exactly what happened in the Texas A&M game last year when Jadarian Price got it. All it takes is one play, right? And that's the thing, and that's what makes Notre Dame dangerous. And frankly, they're going to need it. They're going to need it in this game to take some of that pressure off CJ Carr.
Absolutely going to need it. All right, I wanted to mention our other sponsor, which is H2 Pickleball, founded by alum Todd Hill, is teaming up with fellow alums Jack Gibbs and Will Howells, a top 10 pickleball pro, to bring ND fans the new Pickleball Crew League. Besides football, what better way to connect and engage with ND fans than through pickleball? Membership is free, and members will have access to special pickleball events and discounts. The first event will be a tournament before the Purdue game with medal rounds played on campus. A portion of the proceeds will go to the Rockne Athletics Fund to support our student athletes. Contact Todd at 574-339-5195. Once again, 574-339-5195 to join the league. And be sure to visit the H2 Pickleball facility in Mishawaka when you're in town. H2 Pickleball is located at 5581 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka. Once again, it's 55801 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka. All right. Yeah, Jamie, I think, the offensive line, here's the thing that concerns me a little bit, and it's really the only thing offensively that does concern me besides the quarterback, and that is leadership. And I think you're going to be okay. These guys have played. People forget. Ashton Craig has played in some big games too, right? He's played in some big games as well. You know, I remember him playing very well against Clemson and the really his first action. Got in there and played well. You know, played against Texas A&M, played some big teams, and so this is not a guy that's inexperienced by any means or inexperienced in a hostile environment. The right guard position, who knows? You know, who knows what to expect here? We haven't seen Sullivan Absher play a ton. We haven't seen Gerby Lambert play a ton. They're big dudes, right? So they have the ability and size to be able to push people around. But I don't know how many times you can watch and see one guy miss a play on the offensive line and it screws everything up. So that's a little bit of a concern. Miami's in the same boat. They have to replace a starter as well. So it's not like they're in the same boat. But to me, I think what made Notre Dame really good at the end of the year was, you know, their leadership and what we saw with Pat Coogan. We know Notre Dame's named 2 captains at offensive line in Emil Wagner and Billy Schrouth. So obviously they have 2 guys that are captains, but are they going to be the same kind of leader as Coogan? And, you know, are they the vocal guys that they need? And who's the guy that's going to be in there in the trenches when the game's on the line, standing in there saying, I'm going to go kill this guy and you better be doing the same thing. Who is that guy? And I don't know. I'm not saying they can't do
Mike,
it.
I have to cut you off. Billy Schrouth's going to be that guy.
Okay.
You know it. You know it.
I think he
exactly
will be.
that.
I think he will be, and we got to hope that he is. It's just I haven't seen it, so I can't say that I've seen it. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be Billy. I think you're 100% right. It's like my goal this week. I'm going to see what I can find out about, because usually once a guy becomes a captain, that's when they really start to become a captain. You know what I mean? Like you can act like you're a captain, but when it's been designated, what does that mean, and what do you do with that designation? So I think that's going to be the interesting thing, because once you have 2 weeks to kind of prepare, what has your captains done in these 2 weeks, and have they pushed them to that next level? And that's what we have to hope about. But I think this is a very good offensive line. I'm a little bit concerned about it heading into this first game because of the news that we heard about how Notre Dame's defense kind of pushed Notre Dame's offense around a little bit most of the fall camp. That's a little bit concerning. But we also know, Jamie, this is a group that's been through the wars. This is a good group, and I expect them to play well when they're down there in Miami. Your thoughts here?
I think they're going to play really well. Like, I mean, Miami, there's a big debate going on in the thing right now about because there's a Miami guy who's in here bragging about Miami's defensive line. Miami's definitely got some big time talent on the defensive line. They do. Not as good as Texas A&M last year. Yes, that's 100% true. They don't have 3 guys who are going to go in the top 2 rounds. But Ruben Bain is probably as good or better than like Nick Scorton, last year. He's going to go higher in the NFL draft than him too. Like he's great. So he's going to be a problem. Messidor is a stud too. Like he's a very good player. They have a bunch of good guys, right? They picked up a kid from Louisiana Tech who's a solid player. I mean, I will say, this is what I always look at when you look at a guy when you're coming up from another level. How did he play when he played the Power 4 team? By far his worst game of the year. They played Louisville. He stunk. And then he was great when dominating Conference USA, but not, So I'm like, okay, well, let's see it. Let's see it when they go in these things there. I just really think too, there is a difference there. The one thing why Miami's going to win their fair share of battles up front. That's going to happen. They're going to have guys be disruptive there. They have too much talent for them not to happen. That is going to happen. But I also think that, a guy like Emil Wagner is so much better for going against all these guys that he went against last year. It's not like, hey, you haven't seen anything like Ruben Bain. Yeah, he has seen several guys like that level, right? And he got better as he was going against those guys. So it's going to be about like, can you do a good enough job on that guy to make him not be a game wrecker, to make not some of these other guys be a game wrecker. And that's what's going to matter. And I just think that there was so much revealed at the end of the fourth quarter against Texas A&M with that offensive line, which was like really young at that time, where you just see them like dig down, and they've been able to do that. And so I really think that like, it's going to be a war. It's going to be a battle. Like they're going to go, it's going to be very, very physical game. I mean, I bet Miami probably will never have played a more physical game in the last 3 years, because that's Notre Dame's game. That's what it is. They want it to be a dogfight, and that's what it's going to be. So that would be my question, is like, I think that Notre Dame is prepared for that. That's what they're preparing for. And I think Miami is, definitely, like Cristobal that's his personality too. That's what that kind of thing. But in the end, it'll be about, well, can you do that for 4 quarters? And I've seen it more from Notre Dame's guys than I have Miami's guys. Yes. And that's ultimately why I would give Notre Dame a bit of an edge there.
That, I think, is the thing. And I think that will be the difference in this game, is that Notre Dame has been in these wars. They've been in a lot of tough wars, and they're a 4-quarter team. They're a team that shows up and they play all 4 quarters. With Miami, they remind me so much of playing against USC, right? If USC is in the game at half, it's going to be a game towards the end. That's just the way it is. And they have the ability that if they usually have enough skilled players that if momentum turns, they can take advantage of it and make it a game. So much of this is going to depend on, can Notre Dame survive the initial surge? Because don't kid yourself, this is going to be as heated and as ugly and as fierce as any game that Notre Dame goes into as far as the hostile crowd. But one thing I've known about Miami over the years is if you punch Miami in the mouth and you keep punching, they quit. And they've done that so many times in these games. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to quit in this game, but that's what we've seen in the past. The other thing is, we've seen plenty of evidence under Notre Dame that under Marcus Freeman, it doesn't matter what the score is. I mean, even in the Ohio State game, we're sitting there at 31-7, I think it was, and we're all like, this is not good. They're going to get blown out. And that did not happen. And that's because of the culture that Notre Dame has. So Notre Dame's going to continue to play. Will Miami continue to play if they get down? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I really don't know. I've seen them quit in the past. I've seen them continue to fight. But I know Notre Dame is going to be there and playing until the end of the game, just because that's the culture that they've built here. And when it comes to punching in the mouth, and this is what is I've always said against SC, you have to keep running the football against these teams, because they're not built to take it over and over and over again. And that's always been the success and key to beating SC, is if you can dominate the line of scrimmage, you're going to beat SC. Doesn't matter how much talent they have, because you're dominating the line of scrimmage. And when Notre Dame has lost those games, it's because they've lost the line of scrimmage. I mean, even a couple of years ago when they lost to Caleb Williams out there, I mean, Notre Dame just got ran all over. It wasn't just Caleb Williams. They just got flat ran all over. Their defense got pushed around by SC, and that's why
I think a lot of that was scheme too. I won't want to say they got dominated.
Hey, if you're running for 9-10 yards a clip, yeah, that's getting dominated. I agree with you. It's scheme, but you're still getting dominated, and that hurts you. Yeah, I mean, those runs killed them just as much as anything Caleb Williams did. So. And I agree with you. I think the scheme was very poor in that game, and it certainly changed the next year, and we saw the difference in what that meant. But so to me, I think that's going to be the thing. Here's the other factor that I don't think that people have factored in, and that's turnovers. Notre Dame was one of the best teams in the country last year, creating turnovers and also capitalizing off of turnovers. And if they continue to do that, if they do that in this game, that's going to be a big advantage for Notre Dame too. And it wasn't just one game where Notre Dame had 6 turnovers. It was all year long. They created turnovers the entire year, and critical turnovers. Just ask SC. Just ask Georgia. Just ask Penn State. Those were some huge, absolutely critical turnovers, and we don't know whether that's going to continue. That's how Notre Dame's defense was built. We do have a new defensive coordinator, so we don't know if that's going to continue this year, but it's been something that's been pretty consistent under Notre Dame's defense in the last few years. And for Notre Dame to win, I think they're going to have to create some of those as well. Final thoughts from you here, Jimmy.
I mean, obviously, I would say they got to create turnovers, but it's about them, not turning the ball over.
Yes, no, I agree.
And not being in those situations where you can't be like pinned back. Notre Dame can't be pinned back and turn the ball over and give, Miami a short field like that. Those kind of situations, you can't lose points when you are in a situation where, you have the ball in the red zone and all that. Like that's something that really, like if you look at like Minnesota and Corey Heatherman, who was at Minnesota last year, that's how they beat SC. They got them to turn the ball over. And that's something that I think, with a young quarterback, that's what you're going to worry about in this game, right? Is whether or not they can do that. I don't worry about obviously fumbles can happen, but Notre Dame's back. There hasn't been anybody who's had issues with that it would be like a big problem. I will say, Mark Fletcher had 3 fumbles last year for Miami. Not great for their back. He could be their top back. And Carson Beck led quarterbacks and fumbles last year. He had 12 fumbles last year. So also, in the, mentioned those turnover worthy plays, like he put the ball up in bad situations under pressure. So that is definitely, it could be a really huge part of the game. I mean, it's always a big part of the game, any game, but I always think in those situations, that's how games, if Notre Dame wants to win comfortably, they will win the turnover battle.
That I think is the case. I'll be surprised if Notre Dame blows out this team. I really will. I think Miami's better than some Irish fans are giving them credit for. I really do. I think anytime you have a pretty good defensive line, which I think their defensive line is going to be pretty good, I think Notre Dame will be able to take advantage of the back end of Miami. I think that they'll have some success there. I think they'll also be able to run the ball. It may not happen right away, but I hope Mike Denbrock sticks with it because I think it'll pay off dividends later. And I think that's what we'll see. And I think Miami, they'll make some plays. There's no doubt. This is a good offensive line that they're going to go against. And the key in this game is how much pressure can Notre Dame put on Carson Beck and also stopping the run. If Notre Dame can slow down their running game and make Carson Beck beat you, and then Notre Dame gets after that quarterback, I think they'll win the game. And I think that's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen as in such a dominating fashion as maybe some Irish fans think. But I'll be surprised if Notre Dame gets blown out. I'll be completely surprised by that. I can see Notre Dame losing a close game in this, in that if they make some critical turnovers, I could see Notre Dame losing a close game. But again, I'll be surprised if Notre Dame blows out Miami. I think that they're a better team than people are giving them credit for. Your thoughts?
I mean, they're ranked in the top 10 for a reason. I think, there is a, I mean, it happens with fans that, it's like how the Miami fans get carried away. I mean, there's definitely, Notre Dame fans who want to just think that Carson Beck is the worst quarterback of all time. And he's pretty good. He's not, I mean, yes, if you get pressure on him, he could be bad, but he's going to make some throws.
You better pressure him.
And also he's someone who, if we're talking about they're getting blown out in, at
Alabama.
Alabama.
Or Georgia,
Georgia was getting blown out against Alabama, and he caught fire.
Caught
right?
fire. Yes.
And he's one
He's
of
a
those guys.
streaky guy like that.
He's a very streaky guy. So that is something where you got to kind of like put the foot down on the
Put him on
pedal
his
and
back.
just keep going and put him on his back. And they got to rattle him and hit him. And that was the thing that Alabama didn't do. They never rattled him. And that was why, even though he was making those mistakes, he recovered because he wasn't getting pressured in that way. So that is going to be constant. And I think if Notre Dame can hit him early, like, and I mean, lean on the guy, like you got to really like maybe take that extra step, even if you take the 15 early, might not be a bad thing against him.
Yeah. All right. What do you think, Mr. Flamong? You going to come on here and give any quick thoughts?
I got a question for you guys. What last year against Texas A&M, Mitch Jeter had a big game, very important game, and he made some big kicks in that game. Are we a little nervous about the Noah Burnett situation?
I think so. I think it's.
I don't think you can not be. You just never know what's going to happen, and I don't know. One thing I've noticed is a lot of times guys in games tend to kick better. I mean, I don't know how many times I've watched fall camps where the kickers were just hot garbage, and then they got in the game. I think
Mitch Jeter's an example of that. To be fair.
Exactly. He was not lighting the world on fire either. And a lot of these transfer quarterbacks, that's what it seems to get. I would like to see Notre Dame get a good kicker, recruit a good kicker, and then look. This is going to be a situation moving forward with all of college football. I would still go after top quality kickers. I really would, because if you get a great one, you can keep them for a long time. But you can also run them off. And I hate to say that, but that's just the reality of college football today. If your kicker's not doing his job, he's not doing his job. He needs to go somewhere else. That's the same thing as everywhere else. That's what it's going to be like in the NFL. And Irish fans and all fans need to get used to that. Give a kid a shot. If he doesn't impress, boom, he's out the door. You go find a portal guy. Thoughts?
I was going to say too that we don't. I mean, first of all, we don't even know that Eric Schmidt might not win the job. Like, it didn't sound like it was like officially done, and maybe he will win the job. He is a freshman, obviously. And I mean, you don't want it to come down to a freshman kicker. You don't want it to come down to any kicker on the road in those situations. It's a tough situation to be put in. But this is going to give me a chance. Plug the scouting report. People, check out the scouting report. It's up on Irish Sports Daily right now. I guarantee you there's no other Notre Dame site that has much information on Miami. I guarantee you the Miami site doesn't have as much information on their own friggin' team. They don't do it. They're not telling you the bad stuff too. I'm putting the good and the bad. But it is an issue for Miami as well, right? Like, they had a great kicker last year who was, 6th round pick. He was basically 18 of 19 on field goals. He's automatic pretty much. This year they picked up the kid from Texas, Burt Auburn. They picked him up after, spring portal. He left. He fell apart at Texas last year. He was great before that. Like, he was made over 80% of his kicks, 22 and 2023, made only 42.8% over 40 yards, 10 of 11 inside the 40. So anything long was a problem. 8 of his last 14, missed 2 kicks in the SEC championship game versus Georgia, 1 for 3 versus Arizona State in the CFP, 1 for 2 versus A&M in that game. And he hasn't been kicking good in camp. Like, that is a report, because they brought in another kid from FAU, Carter Davis, to be the kickoff specialist. He's 4 of 11 for his career. He's in the competition with Auburn. Like, it's not the job wasn't won. Like, I don't think that, they don't feel good about the kickers either. None of these teams want it to come down to the kickers. Like, I guarantee you. I will say, like, it's a tough job. It's a first game, like Greg said. Mitch Jeter just absolutely clutch in those moments, and obviously he was clutch in CFP as well. But I mean, if I was Notre Dame or Miami and it came down a kick to win the game or tie the game or something like that late, I wouldn't feel great.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to see what happens. I mean, it's not like he didn't make kicks. He made some kicks. He just didn't make as many as you'd want. But again, I think Greg pointed out, neither did Mitch Jeter. You know what I mean? He was not impressive either. And a lot of Notre Dame's portal kickers haven't been overly impressive in fall camp. And so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. We just got to hope that the guys can put it together and get it ready to go for this first game. All right, guys, that's going to be it for the show. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Like I said, we'll be there talking on Tuesday instead of Monday because we're going to, the game is Sunday night. And so we'll do it on Tuesday next week versus Monday for Power Hour. So be looking for that. Be looking for all the hit and hustle this week. There's going to be lots of it with Greg and Jamie. And then also be looking for Greg's show on Monday morning after the game on Sunday. And that's always a great show as well. So be looking for all the content. Make sure you subscribe and like our channel at on YouTube, and then subscribe for a premium subscription at Notre Dame, at Irish Sports Daily. Go to the premium section, click on that, and sign up for a subscription today. That's going to be it for the show, folks. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll talk to you on Tuesday with the next Power Hour.